Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. And once again, Matt Germain and I, Mr. Mark Corbin, are joining you with all the great news about the Tampa Bay Rays. You know, what's happening with the stadium news, what's happening with that team, and will they ever see 500 again? Hey, Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Just a ray of sunshine, Mark.
Oh, yeah, I'm telling you, it's tough this year. We're not going to have the year that we want. It doesn't mean we're not going to move forward and good things will happen, but it's just part of how the things seem to work out, at least this year for the Rays.
This is the kind of season where it tests you as a baseball fan. It basically says, are you able to ride the ups and the downs as evenly as you should? And I think when you talk to most baseball players, the ones that do the best, I guess, at managing their emotions, they never get too high, they never get too low. They sort of ride the in between.
Well, let me ask you this. I agree with that, but when the wife and I went to Atlanta this past weekend and watched the Rays take on the Braves, and by the way, when they're chanting Rays or Braves, sometimes it sounds very similar in a crowd of 49,000 or whatever that was, 40,000. But man, whether I enjoyed the Rays playing that day or not, I can tell you what I didn't enjoy. That place, it was hot and as humid as any place we've got in Florida there, Truist, this past Friday night. And we're there. I got to tell you this part anyway. It's just kind of funny. We are there in the next last row on one of the chairs, and right behind us is a couple of families. And they each have like children that are probably about 3 years old, if that. Well, the gentleman behind me, he has a child sitting in his lap, and she likes to use her feet to push forward and kicking me in the head and the back.
That would drive you insane.
It did. It lasted about 2 innings, and Karen and I took a walk and came back. But before we did, the somebody else decided to spill a drink on my arm I had around my wife. it, oh, it was like, you know what? I was feeling good at the beginning of the game, and then the weather just was nasty. But I can't remember if it was that game or another one or both. But when I hear the name Phil Maton coming out, I just shiver. I wished well for that guy, and I really want Kyle to be able to do whatever he can with him. But when I hear that name, I just think bad things are going to happen after that.
Yeah, when they first signed Phil, I mentioned, uh, how badly things had gone every time that the Rays had invested in a reliever. I think there's only really one time with Rafael Soriano that it turned out to be, a really good investment. So their history with this kind of deal, and the Rockies sort of proved that a few years ago. I think it was 3 years ago, where they invested like over $25 million in Wade Davis, Jake McKee, and all these guys that they brought in to try to revamp their pen. It just didn't work out. Buying a pen is not a good way to build it. You can see the Angels with Robert Stevenson, and he's on the IL still to this day. You're much better off building from within, which is why earlier this year I mentioned on X that the Rays they don't have a single guy from their system in the pen at all. Not one. How many drafts have we seen where they drafted pitcher after pitcher and they don't have one reliever that they're able to develop on their own on their team? Like there's something not right there, and hopefully it changes over time, and they have a better ability of building it from within, because it's definitely not an area you can really spend your way out of when you're in trouble.
No, and I agree with you there. The one of the bright lights for me was Garrett Cleavinger, and I really thought until about a week ago, I thought he was it. I thought, man, this guy, he is cooking. He is going to be the guy. Him and Jason Adam are going to be the guys to go to. And quite honestly, I used to give Adam a lot of grief too. But yeah,
The relievers, I think they're used to it, right? They know everything is a micro examination of their skills. So yeah, that's normal. But yeah, I agree. I think Adam and Clevenger, everybody was most comfortable with this season.
Yeah, poor Pete got hit the other day, but I was reading earlier that it's nothing substantial, that it's just a bruised finger at the moment. They thought maybe he broke a finger or something after being hit with a 103-mile-per-hour ball by Mr. Correa. So, but evidently he's going to be just fine. So I was glad to see that's going on.
No, it's great, and I think the Rays are gonna have the chance now to basically, I don't want to say do whatever they want, but I don't think like you know when sometimes people are just sort of bad, you don't really get the choice to move on from them because you're sort of getting the good and then bad and then good and then bad. At least in this case with the Rays, the guys that have been so bad that no fan would blink if they moved on from Phil Maton or some of the other guys in the pen that have had they just haven't shown signs of life. I think Phil had like one good week,
Yeah.
or maybe three or four really solid outings. But like I said, all of those outings were in non-high leverage. As soon as you put him in even medium leverage, he tends to dance around the strike zone a lot more. And when he goes in, it's usually with, I don't know if it's the wrong pitch mix or the wrong location, but whatever the case, it's just not working out well.
Hopefully, if Kyle can tune him up, or maybe somebody else in the system, if he goes down AAA, can help tune him up. But it doesn't seem to be there right now. You
No.
know, well, one of the fun things I told you about going to Atlanta was I'd hoped to have seen Charlie and Darno do their thing together, but the game we went to, they neither one of them were playing that day. So, but it's always a joy to see them. We talk about the X-rays all the time, and then last night an X-ray kind of took us down a little bit on. Looked like it was going to be a win last night with the Twins, and there he is, Mr. Margot himself, Manuel.
Yep.
And who did they bring to the bat? Because he was actually already on base. Was it Santander? No,
Santana.
Santana. I knew that wasn't right. Okay, yeah, Santana. But
But, he's a good hitter. It's not like Phil Maton gave up a hit to uh, to a guy that never gets hits. It's just a matter of, pitching to the moment, I guess.
yeah. Well, it was interesting too, though. I think looking at the strongest player last night was that guy who was dragging the tarp or holding the tarp down across the field as the rain was coming and the what the end of the flap.
Yeah, I saw that. It's funny.
Oh, but well, I'm just jumping around a little bit here. Another thing about Atlanta I really enjoyed watching was that shortstop, Orlando Arcia. Man, that guy, he is amazing watching him out there on the field.
Yeah, and the
It's
funny part is people didn't realize he would be this good when they let Dansby Swanson walk. And I was a little bit critical about them letting, because Dansby's a spirit guy, right? Like he's
yeah.
the rah team guy, does everything professional, a lot like Marcus Semien, that style player, or even Willie Adames, like just carries the team well. He's just, a steady performer through the year. So I was surprised when they let him go. But yeah, you're right. Arcia has definitely stepped in and sort of made them forget all about it because he's a fun player to watch, no doubt.
Well, another thing I was watching, and I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch all the game, and that's the Gray Sox and the Birmingham Black Barons that
Hmm.
played yesterday at Rickwood.
Yep.
And your boy, man, he's there. He's kicking it. Chandler Simpson. Got Roy Wood Jr. there talking with him before the game and asking him, says, well, who are some of the people you really watch? He said, well, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays. Not surprised. He said, Willie. He said, but if you get more contemporary or more closer, he says, there's people like Ricky Henderson. I thought, yeah, Ricky Henderson. That's who you could see as far as stealing bases. And then at the beginning of the game, he's the first one at bat representing the Gray Sox / Montgomery Biscuits. And he gets a hit and he just puts it right out there along the ground and just, gets himself down there to first. And the next batter up is a ball. And so it's only second pitch of the game. And Chandler Simpson goes over and steals second.
He's
I,
making it a joke now, pretty much. It's just every time he gets a hit, it's a double, like, at a minimum, and sometimes it's a triple. So Yeah, the when you can, how many? Let me just ask you this, Mark. Okay, we're at the 100 at bat mark, right? How
Okay.
many players get promoted from A plus to double A and hit around 400?
Jeez.
Right?
That just doesn't happen, Matt.
It really doesn't. And when it does happen, usually it's a phenom of some sort, right? And I think people are reluctant to put Chandler Simpson in that category because he doesn't have the power. And I think it's blasphemy. I really do. I think that there's more value in Chandler Simpson because he'll drive the other team bonkers. First of all, you can't get him out, so that's in itself is a struggle. He'll foul off pitches. He'll get on base when he definitely shouldn't. He'll hit a dribbler, and all of a sudden he's on base, and all your pitcher's thinking is, "Oh, well, there's a triple." Like there's no way out of the inning at that point. He knows he's giving up a run pretty much if the other team has enough, outs to get him in. But that when you're putting that kind of potential at the top of the lineup with the kind of power that the Rays have gathered through the draft and other signings and a trade with Junior Cabanero, that's a lot of you know, I don't know, a lot of fun because you're putting a guy on base constantly, and then you've got the guys to drive him in behind him. So I don't know. I know this year's been, a struggle for the Rays. I don't know how much of what's there that we're watching tonight is going to be left behind by the time Chandler Simpson arrives, but he's a special talent. And in my opinion, he should be in the top 50 right now in terms of prospects across the MLB, if not the top 20.
Yeah. Yeah. What you, he's amazing to watch. And what you said about power, it is, oh, well, I'm saying it's almost simple to see people criticize what he's doing there because he is strategic in what he is doing. One thing, let's see, Roy Wood was asking, he said, so how many home runs are you going to get this year? He says, he said, well, up or over, he says, and Chandler finally said, well, two. He says, but at least I'll do two, maybe two. And the thing was, Roy Woods Jr. says, well, you had that home run the other day, but it looked like it only should have been a double.
So yeah, that's hilarious. I
Well,
really, yeah.
yeah. And the thing of it is that, yeah, he's not hitting it out of the park. We've got so many players who feel the need to hit it out of the park every time they're at bat. But a good strategic ball that's placed out there, if you got a batter who can do that, if you got a batter who can steal bases as effectively as Chandler Simpson seems to be doing, man, don't worry about the daggone home runs. The rest of it.
Let me ask it to you this way, okay? Would you rather a player who hits 260, gets on base about 335, hits 20 home runs, steals 30 bases? Or would you rather have one that hits 360, gets on base about 400 and above, uh, and steals 120 bases?
Give me that second guy all day long.
Which one are you taking? Everybody, I'm pretty sure, would take the second guy, even though you're going up against a 20-30 guy, which people value because they're like, oh, 20 home runs, 30 stolen bases. What I told you is pretty much what Randy Arozarena did in his best year.
Yeah.
So, if you're measuring him against Randy Arozarena and he blows him out of the water just based on statistics historically, and he's been steady at that. No matter what level he's been at that level all the way through, and now it's double A, which he's seeing a wide variety of pitches, and they're attacking him more aggressively now, and he's just having nothing to do with it. Like Luis Arias of the Padres, he's able to slow down his bat and decide where he's putting the ball. That to me is a lost skill that we need to get back to
Here it
because
is.
the number of shifts with the number of holes that are on the field, you can put it places where you can have success. We saw it against the Rays the other day where they bunted 3 times in a row. Did they not have success? You don't need to hit it hard. So all this exit velocity stuff is garbage. We
Yeah.
need to stop it. Like there's a happy medium is what I'm saying. We need to get back to the basics of all you need to do is get that ball to land once, right? And not be caught. That's it. And then if you're able to do that and get on base, you're going to have success. You don't need to put it over the fence. If Randy Arozarena played as smartly as Chandler Simpson and shorten his swing, he would be an electric player
Oh yeah.
instead of struggling the way that he is now. I think he's been more steady and better at bats recently, but he's still seeking that power. He's still over swinging big time.
Yeah, I mean he's had some good results here the last few games, but he's had some struggling other times. And I do appreciate a player like Chandler Simpson and anybody who can place that ball so well. I mean, I love to think that when I see some of these players and they find that spot where none of the outfielders or infielders can get that ball in time. And I think, were they really capable of placing it that well? Or is that just happenstance from them slugging away?
Yeah, it is a special skill. And I know growing up, probably, you would be able to reflect on these guys as well. But Tony Gwynn, Kirby Puckett,
Oh, yeah.
all these guys that had high averages growing up that simply just wanted to put the ball in play in a place where they could drive doubles, if they could. And if they did walk into a home run, that would be great. But it wasn't something they went out and looked for. They just wanted to keep the lineup chugging, and the more guys on base, the more frustrated the pitcher gets. That's basically the way it rolls. I also think when you look back at the Yankees and Red Sox rivalry, during the Jeter days and the Ortiz days, they had a way during that era of fouling off pitches like there's no tomorrow. Like if they didn't like the pitch, they just fouled it off, spoiled it, and kept going. And you had these lengthy at bats, and that's how you got into these 4 hour, 4.5 hour games because they were just, wearing the pitchers down, waiting for the pitch that they could drive out of the park. So there's other skills that go along with it. It's not just a matter of hitting it, anytime, especially when you're limited in speed and you can't do what Chandler Simpson does and just put it anywhere on the ground and you can pretty much have an infield single or, you know. But I think those skills, those little, abilities are the things that stand out to me a lot of times. And Isak Paredes with the Rays is one of those guys that can spoil pitches left, right, and center. And all of a sudden you're looking at a 10, 11 pitch at bat and he gets a home run, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you wear out a pitcher. You're wearing him out. You're not going to see him next inning because suddenly he's done 20, 25 pitches this inning. I mean, he's hit his cap. Maybe he's already up to 90 pitches or something because of you and a couple others who've worn him out with 10 pitches and fouling after foul after foul after foul.
Exactly. Yep.
Wow. Hey, there was some good news come through uh, in the off field this week. And that came from St. Pete City Council. You and I have been talking in the past. We had Colleen Wright on here a while back, and we know there's two stages of votes they're going to take to get everything done with the Rays and establishing the new stadium in St. Pete. And one of those votes took place earlier this week. I think it was yesterday, actually. And they've what was it? They had a 5-3 count supporting it. So there's total of 8 council people. There's no tiebreaker with the mayor or anything like that. So you had to have 5 votes. There wasn't going to be anything with a tie.
Right.
They're still challenged because they still didn't even have the documents that they voted on.
Hmm.
But I guess they figure it's inconsequential, Matt, if they don't have everything together for the next group. Then there's going to be a vote. What I think around the 12th. I'll have to dig out the exact date, but the council's going to vote. Then have another 6-hour workshop, and uh, hopefully we'll get this thing done. But the longer this thing takes, the more questions I have, and one of them I was thinking I never really asked was, what about gambling? What about, some of these parks, they've got uh, a gambling place right outside the gate, and they're starting to looking at putting them inside the stadiums. So whether you got a DraftKings or an MGM betting place inside, and I'm curious what might evolve with that, or if that's even covered in the contract. I have to dig into it, but I don't remember seeing anything on that particular aspect.
I think it's sad to be quite honest. I'm not a like I've been a poker fan, back in the day. I played a significant amount of poker. I'm not anti-gambling by any means. But I think they're taking advantage of what really ends up being a disease a lot of times,
Oh yeah.
uh, and profiting from it. And to me, that's a little bit sickening to see, sports in general marry themselves to so much gambling. Uh, you, I mean, a lot of the movies and a lot of the things that we've seen in the past that have kind of, shown the impacts of gambling have a lot to do with college basketball, for instance, right? Where people are gambling through bookies and this, that, the other thing. When it was illegal, it wasn't any better. So I'm not saying that that is any better or the avenue they should go in and hide it, right? So the fact that it's out in the open is okay. It's just the promotion, amount that they're trying to push it. It's almost like at this point, okay, we know it's out there. It's fine if you want to go seek it, but don't shove it on the people so that they always have it. Like how they did with tobacco companies, and they
Oh
said,
yeah.
you know what, you're not allowed to advertise now because kids were getting. Yeah, it should be the same thing with gambling. If you want to gamble, sure, go out, gamble. You should also have a way of blocking yourself from gambling if you feel that it's a something that you need to stop because it's always going to be in the favor of the company that's doing it. You're never ultimately, as a group, as a whole, going to win gambling,
No.
right? So I think it is sad that it's become so prominent. Uh, I mean, they're always going to seek out the profits wherever they might be, and the fact that they still sell the amount of hot dogs that they do when we know they're cancer causing, and there's a lot of diseases out there that are caused directly from processed meats, and we continue to push those like candy. That's another aspect, right? If we look at each other as human beings first, um, the things that we're kind of putting each other through are not really positive. They're very negative. And so I see that kind of thing, and it kind of makes me reflect on life more than anything. And I think yeah, I don't want to be too much of everybody should be only doing good things in life. But those kinds of things, I wish that they would use their platform to do better with.
Well, I think that's a reasonable, approach. And let's face it, you're a dad. I'm a dad. And we probably feel a little differently than some others. And especially I think you have younger children. And I think we want to make sure we're giving them the best world we can. And that some of those things don't make sense to be there, whether it be the gambling, the cigarettes, or the, the carcinogenic hot dog I enjoyed at Truist Park the other day.
Yep.
Um, but as you started talking, all I could think of was Joe Camel, Joe Camel, Joe
Yeah.
Camel.
Yeah. That's, baseball players used to have that cigarette dangling from their mouth during interviews back in. It was the cool thing to do.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean on YouTube you could find all kinds of commercials of sports athletes hawking a certain brand of cigarette or such, and it's today, I mean it's taken a long time for those things to change. But
I will
I
say, like when you go to certain parks, like you went to Truist, like I think the last change, because what I saw going to like I went to Camden, I went to see the Royals, I went to Rogers Center. What I've seen is an uptick in good food. It's not cheap, but
no.
but there's like barbecue, there's this, there's that, there's all different kinds of foods that you can get. It's just the ones that walk around that still push the hot dogs a lot, right? The hot dogs, peanuts are fine, but beer or whatever else. Um, and so to me, that's the last thing that could change, right? Where you could have a guy walking around with burritos instead of hot dogs, or whatever you want to have them carry around. Little tacos, I'm sure they would carry almost exactly the same as hot dogs, and they wouldn't be as bad for you as and they'd probably be tastier in some cases. But you want to hear something funny? Like when I was a kid, one of my favorite things to be sitting at the Expos games was the fact that they is the only stadium where they did everything in French and English. So when the guy went around with the big tray of snacks, it would be something like this. It'd be chip crusty cracker jack,
Oh, do
uh,
that again. Do that
yeah,
again.
cotton candy, ba 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 ba.
Oh, I love it, man.
Hilarious. right? It's one of those things where, first of all, Cracker Jacks is the same in French and English, and the fact that cotton candy was ba 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 ba. I still remember the first time that they said it. I started laughing. It was just yeah. Anyways, but yeah, the foods I think all together at the stadiums are getting more. I don't want to say posh, but they're getting more like what the population is eating outside of the stadium as well,
Yeah.
and eating more away from the hot dogs. Unless there's a charitable event, I think the like Rogers Center, the Blue Jays are trying to sell as many hot dogs as possible for charity, and like they're gathering money for it. So that's the exception, I guess.
Little counterproductive, sort of like if you had a health organization putting that up and also having a cigar smoke room while you're at
It
it.
really is. It makes me shake my head sometimes. Yeah, I don't get it.
Oh, in Tampa, I mean, it used to be big cigar capital, and I won't say the world, but a big cigar capital anyway. It's still part of the culture, certainly around Ybor. And I know I've told you time again about working down at the museum, Tampa Baseball Museum down there. It's interesting, 'cause I've been doing a little bit more looking at the history of Ybor and of baseball in Tampa Bay. And there's a gentleman by the name of Rick Vaughn, and he put out a book on St. Petersburg and how spring training kind of evolved around there. And I had him on before. And I'm reading his book right now that he has on Tampa and how everything from what's going on with Plant Field and how, with it, Babe Ruth hit his 560, 540, 580 feet home run,
Right.
there. And something I just put up on X because he also mentioned that it was like the first All-Star game was in Tampa. Because this morning I was reading John Romano of the Tampa Bay Times talking about, hey, we've been here how long? Every 29 other teams have had an All-Star game and not Tampa. And I thought, well, look at Rick Vaughn's book. What happened is way back, I guess it's probably 1939, when Russia invaded Finland. This is interesting. When Russia invaded Finland, the U.S. wanted to do something. They wanted to back Finland. So former President Herbert Hoover was enlisted to help find ways to raise funds for the people of Finland and rebuild from all the attacks they had over there. Well, one of the things was going to be a sports division. And lo and behold, they decided to work with, I guess it was whatever it was, Kennesaw Mountain Landis back then, and put together an all-star team, an all-star game. And they actually did it in Tampa, which was it's an interesting story. So I
Like,
came across this image of that all-star game, and I put it up on X earlier. But it's interesting when you look at, oh yeah, we've never had an all-star game at the Trop. However, we did have one in Tampa back in the about 1940s or thereabouts. It's like,
a
oof.
really good story, Mark. I hadn't heard that at all.
Yeah. That guy, I got to have him on here again, man. He's got great stories to tell. I just go, peel through that. It's only like about 160 pages, but every page I'm reading, it's like three new things pop out at me. And it's like, yeah, it's crazy. Talking historically, I mean, we can look at what's going on right now with Rickwood Field and the Birmingham Barons and also the Montgomery Biscuits, also known as the Gray Sox, playing
Right.
there this week. So it's interesting. We look back at the game and things that have changed. It's kind of sad the synchronicity of Willie Mays passing as the Rickwood Field game comes to
Right.
be.
I am glad that Willie got to see the fact that the Negro League stats were put in,
Yeah.
by everybody. So hopefully that's something that he was happy to see before he passed. But yeah, that's sad news. He's one of the greats, right? There's very few players that kind of get national headlines when they pass away, and
Yeah.
he's definitely one of them. And set the standard. A lot of people that saw him play said, there's very few that could touch him when it came to playing center field defensively. So that one of the greats.
Yes, indeed. He was a great spokesman for the game and certainly for the Negro Leagues as well. And it fascinated me. I think we talked about this before when they first started incorporating the Negro League stats, that Willie only had like 10 more runs or something. There's only like one year our very limited number of data on him with the Negro Leagues, and I can only wonder how much more depth that there's still to be uncovered on those statistics.
Right. No, hopefully somebody will do that digging.
Yeah, I hear you. Oh, okay. I've got another good one for you, my friend. So it was a Tuesday with the Twins, and I didn't realize that both the Twins and the Rays had home run leaders in the league there, and it just knocked me down. I said, "Oh my gosh, who are they?" Well, it's Pablo Lopez and Aaron Savale. Both of them have had more home runs than anybody hit at the time. They both at the time were tied at having allowing 14 home runs, and but since then, Pablo has taken the lead. He now has 16 home runs he's allowed for the season. So, Aaron, sad news, but it's kind of news you really don't mind hearing from somebody else.
That's going to end up being one of those weird trades because at first, Pablo Lopez for Luis Arias, it was kind of a clean cut. Both teams won. Now it's a lot blurrier
Yeah.
because Luis Arias got traded for a package after struggling beginning of the year. And then Pablo Lopez is having, an up and down season. So it'll be interesting to see when we look back at it much further down the road when the package that Miami got back ends up developing and seeing what it looks like. I have a feeling that they're going to be on top because I don't think the Twins will be able to get a huge package for Lopez if ever they do decide to move on. But if Lopez finds his form again and they end up making the playoffs and he helps them through some wins, they could still end up looking the best out of the two. So it's a pretty intriguing trade to kind of look back on. And speaking of which, I do want to mention um, pitching tonight is the fifth round and seventh round draft pick of the Rays um, from the 2018 draft. So the Rays took Taj Bradley in the fifth round, and 60 picks later, they took Joe Ryan. That was in the same draft as Shane McClanahan and Matthew Liberatore. So you talk about four really, really, really good arms that they got in that draft. And it's too bad they can't pitch on the same side. We all understand why they dealt him at the time, but two special talents, and they're both doing pretty well tonight. Tied 1-1 so far um, in the fourth.
I was wondering because I heard the name Joe Ryan. I said, I know that name. I know that name. I'll check a real quick baseball reference. Oh, he's been with the Twins for 4 years. I said, but something still tickles my brain. Says Rays, 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 and
Mm.
I'd forgotten about him being there in the draft and us picking him then.
Right. No, it definitely hurt because he had just pitched for USA in WBC, and we had visions of him and the rest of the young Rays, coming up together and having success. So when they dealt him, it was a pretty big shock.
Yeah,
Like how last year they said they had dangled Junior Caminero at the trade deadline.
right.
It would have been that kind of shock. It was that high, like he was that highly thought of at the time. You might have put him about the top three or four fastballs in the minors among prospects. So, it was definitely a shock. He's a good talent. He's a good guy. As far as I know, he got along with everybody in the Rays organization, still does. So, it's fun to see him having success in Minnesota. And he's pitched really well for them and steadily through the time since they got him.
Well, I'm always glad to see somebody thrive after
Right.
we've dealt them somewhere else. Have you heard any news on Harold Ramirez? Is he since the DFA?
He's in the Nationals picked him up on a minors deal. I don't know what opt-outs he has as part of that deal. Like often he'll be in the minors, but if they get an offer from somebody else, they can jump ship. Um, Unless they're offered a position with that team. So the Nationals did well there. I think, there's a good chance they'll end up being sellers at some point. So if they want to call him up and help the young guys out once they make a few deals, then they'd be able to do that. Because I think they have some guys like Lane Thomas and stuff like that would be highly sought after. So there's some gaps there that they would, possibly be looking to fill, and Harold could do well for them.
Well, I hope he finds, a place that works out for him because again, he's one of the beloved players you see out there. Everybody loves to see him. With Trisha Whitaker, she's talking with him at Bally Sports. I think everybody's picks up a little bit on that to get a little excited in the story about him and his child with autism and the blue support that they do for that cause. Those kind of things just really endear him. But while he's being DFA'd, I'm looking back and saying, well, who are these guys been on the entry list that are on the horizon of returning? I mean, looking at a little bit of pitching going on.
Yeah, I think the Jeffrey Springs just threw 2 innings last night, did really well. His stuff just looks like it's spot on. Like there's not much difference. Um, well, there is a difference. Like he's still working his way back, but there's not much compared to what he was doing when he started 2023, and he looked electric at that point. He looked like he was on
Yeah.
his way to a Cy Young potential season. So it's good to see that. And Shane Boz has looked pretty solid as well. Um, I think both of those are going to be pushing for positions. Now, Shane Boz is not on the IL anymore. He was basically put in AAA, like on using up one of his options, right? So
Gotcha.
there's no pressure to bring him up, which gives the Rays more time to figure out, trades or anything else that they might want to do, or to see if a guy ends up with an injury at some point, they need to replace him. So, but the same can't be said for Jeffrey Springs. So there is a timeline with Jeffrey Springs. I'm not exactly clear on when they need to bring him back, but essentially, once you see him hit the 5 innings mark,
Yeah.
you'll know that that's, the next one might be an MLB after he does that, and maybe the one after that. So, um, right now he's at 2 innings. I haven't really monitored how many pitches he's had to use to get through that. But I like what I see from him for sure. The other thing it does too, if ever they, I don't know. I don't know exactly what their plan is going to be, how long they're going to stick with this roster,
Mm.
and when they're going to decide to make moves. But I know they need two to tango, right? It's so they're going to need that other team that gives them what they're looking for or something close to that before they do, make any trades. And I will say that the Los Angeles Dodgers, the dreaded Los Angeles Dodgers, who stole Tyler Glass now from the Rays, according to Rays fans, have had a few significant injuries that could put them in the mix for a couple of guys. So Yamamoto went down, so you have to believe that somebody like Zach Eflin would be of interest to them. Yamamoto has a shoulder issue, a
Mm.
rotator cuff. That's not something you want to dance with, very long because especially when you're talking about a guy that has what, a 12-year deal. You want to nurse that rotator cuff back to health because it's a longer game for them than just this year. And then the other guy is Mookie Betts. So I'm not saying the Rays have the replacement for Mookie Betts in house, but they have guys that the Dodgers may have interest in bringing in to help deepen their roster while they wait for guys to return, right? So that's one team I would keep an eye on, and the other one is the Cubs. I think they have some pieces that the Rays would be really interested in. But all in all, I think it was surprising to see Harold Ramirez not get a return. I really thought a team would want to snag him before anybody else did, just because of the amount of success he has against left-handed pitching. But like I said before, I think when you're looking at that as 20 to 25% of pitchers in MLB, you can't really carry it very easily.
No, no, and I, to talk about Harold, but also the pitching. I keep thinking, Matt, about how many pitchers every team has. I mean, it's half the freaking roster. Um, you look at this, and are we going to see more of these guys? Maybe Boz or Jeffrey Springs, they come back and they're a 2, 3 inning guy. I mean, or maybe we see more of them as relievers. I mean, once upon a time, you always expected a pitcher to go the full game. Maybe you put in a reliever, but I really wonder about the whole methodology for the future of the game and the arms of these young men. If we're going to see a whole change about how pitchers are used in the game. And by that, I mean the inning and pitch count.
You can build your roster to head towards what you're talking about. But having said that, you need to do your research on personalities and their routines,
Yeah.
uh, because they're very, very routine-oriented jobs that demand people acting in completely different ways to get prepared. So when let's say, for instance, they tell Shane Baz, you know what, you've never pitched more than 90 innings in a season. We'd like to just work you up to that amount. So because of that, we'll put you in the pen and we'll bring you out for 2 to 3 innings at a time. He's like, fine, but my entire routine now is shot. I've got to start from scratch. I got to warm up differently. Everything that I do normally is changed now. So I'm sitting there for 2, 3, 4, 5 innings. I don't know when I'm going in. My mindset is completely different. So there are pitchers that are willing and able to do that easily and can transition back and forth with just a little bit of a mindset difference. And there's others that will be stubbornly completely against it and will raise hell if you try to do it to them. So you just have to do your research and know what you're working with. And oftentimes, I mean, it's up to the manager to sell it to the player, and kind of give them that vision. So one example of that was successful was Luis Urias with the Dodgers.
Right.
That's how they broke him into MLB. They basically said, you know what, we'll bring you in whenever we need you, and we'll give you 3, 4 innings at a time. He did great. It actually, lengthened him to the point where he was able to be a starter later on, and he had a lot of success. So for the Rays, I think you could do that with somebody like Joe Rock, for example, or Mason Montgomery is doing that in AAA right now, but he could be the same kind of style for that. And it's easy to sell to them because they don't have a starter's job in MLB yet.
Right.
It's harder to do it when you've been an MLB starter and that's the job that you want. So I think that's the big thing.
Well, I think any young players are growing up doesn't say, "Ooh, I'd love to be able to come into a game for just a couple of innings. Wouldn't it be so neat?"
It's true. Uh,
Oh no, no, the game changes the way we play it, and everything from size of bases to pitch counts to how many timeouts. I mean, how many times you can call. Okay, you got to smile when you see how many times that a batter can call time because think about Yandy Diaz 2 or 3 years ago, man. How many times would he step away from the plate at a single at bat? It seemed like he would wear out the pitcher that way as much as fouling off the foul tip balls or whatever. Just
Very true.
so many things.
Yeah, Edwin Encarnacion was the same way. He would always have to adjust every piece of gear he had on. Go back.
Oh, I don't know. Oh boy. So, what do you got planned for the future of this? What do you think is going to happen now for the upcoming games? We got Pittsburgh's up on the mantle after the Twins, I believe.
Rays are seeing like just a gamut of high end pitching, which isn't going to make it easy on their lineup that's already struggling. Um, so, the good thing is that um, they're going to get a taste of uh, some strong pitching so that afterwards they might end up, being able to go on a winning streak of sorts. But I think that they're going to see Jones and Skeens and a lot of I don't know, a lot of pitching that can be volatile because they're younger, but it's going to test the lineup, especially with them being right-handed pitchers and the Rays lineup still lacking a bit of that left-handed depth. Josh Lowe is looking like he's hanging on so far, so that's helping out the lineup a little bit. I think Richie Palacios has slowed down quite a bit, and I posted that a bit earlier where there's a couple of guys in the lineup that need to get going. Johnny DeLuca's hit the ball well recently, and that helps. Um, but you can't just leave it to Jose Siri and Isak Paredes, and maybe Randy Rosarena's heating up now a little bit, so that helps. But when you're facing right-hander, that's not going to be sustainable more than likely, right? For extended periods. But we'll see. I'm still in the wait and see approach. I kind of waved the white flag and said the Rays are more than likely not going to make the playoffs this year, just because of how tough their August and September schedules are. They only have 3 days off in both those months, which isn't much. So their pen is going to be torn apart, and their pen is already atrocious. So, when you put those two things together, that's not really a recipe for success. Um, so I don't see the playoffs right now for the Rays, and I think it's going to be more about accumulating a few compensation draft picks if they can, accumulating depth that's going to be able to support the young guys coming up, and that's fine. They Pepio and Bradley are going to be the future of the rotation. We're going to get to see them grow. There's a lot to kind of cheer for and support through the rest of the year, no matter what happens. So yeah, hopefully they still, throw up enough highlights that it keeps us excited all the way through the.
I mean, Yandy, you got to love the count. Is like, how was it, 21 games or 20 games that he's been on base consecutively?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, those are the things you got to enjoy. Man, that's to me. I take those little nuggets and cherish them. Whether we even get above 500 or not, yeah, I'd like to be that. What I don't want to see is at the end of the season we're number 5 in the AL East, and hey, last one to leave the basement, turn the lights off, please. It's
I
uh,
don't know. I don't know which way I'm leaning yet. Like I said, every team has a win streak in them, and the Rays have yet to have it. What it'll look like when they have it, I don't know. But they will have it. Assuming Josh Lowe gets healthy, maybe Junior Caminero gets back to AAA at some point and then gets the call and it boosts the lineup. Maybe Curtis Mead comes back and his bat's been on fire in AAA lately. Jonathan Aranda could end up coming back and having, a punch for the lineup. So they just need to get that spark and that winning streak going. Once they have it going, then yeah, you can go on let's say they go on an 11 or 13 game winning streak against whoever. It doesn't even matter when in the season. That changes the entire outlook
oh
because
yeah.
then you're what, 5, 6 games above 500. Uh, Anything can happen at that point from that point forward. It's just that right now, if you're looking at the Rays and what they need to get to 90 wins, they need to have about a 625 winning percentage. That's tough compared to, when you're looking at the competition they're going to have and the schedule they have. They have the toughest schedule in the majors left from this point forward, by weight of opponents. So, it's a lot to ask. Do they have the starting pitching to do it? Absolutely, they do. They have that depth. They have something that all the teams are looking for right now, which is starting pitching depth. Are they going to add enough to the lineup to balance it out and sort out their pen at the same time? That's the part that I'm not really sold on, especially with the way Kevin Cash has been using the pen and
Mm.
the relievers. It's mind numbing, to be quite honest. I know he's handed players and he's got to use them, but at some point, somebody's got to decide to either amp it up or shut it down, one or the other.
Yeah, you get to work with the tools at hand, man, and that's the challenge. I mean, we're seeing some of these players. I mean, not trying to trash anybody, but a couple of the just a couple of guys in the pen, and you're wondering why they're still there. And Kevin can only work with who he has, and that's what he has right now. So, it's still exciting for me. I'm not down on the Rays. I, I figure if I ever think about getting down the Rays, I'll listen to a White Sox podcast, and then
Yeah, well, and it's, to be quite honest, it's hard to be down on them when you know how close some of their best talents are. When you're talking about having, 5 top 100 prospects sitting there in AAA and AA, then the help is coming. It's here. It's not like you're the Blue Jays and you don't have any, right?
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you have Elvis Martinez, but he's here. He's already arrived, and he's not really. I don't know. To me, he's not really a top prospect. I think they put him there to have some representation. But regardless, he hits the ball hard when he hits it. I just don't know that I would put some other people ahead of him. But all that to say that they have a handful. The Jays might have one. So when you're looking at the difference between the two, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel for the Rays, if you're able to kind of be patient on some of those prospects. I know it's hard because what I've been hearing a lot from Rays fans is this is we've had a lot of top prospects come up that resemble more quadruple A player caliber
Hmm. Hmm.
than MLB caliber. And I think it's a misconception because of this. If you're a team that's competitive, right, and that's going for that playoff spot, you're winning 95, 100 games, 99 games, you're always going to demand more out of your roster and out of the players performing because the stakes are high and you're trying to push that limit. So your patience for young players to learn on the go is going to be a lot lower than a team that is down and out and has all the room in the world to give them. So I don't think it's a fair assessment to say that about the Rays. Um, I think it's more a matter of demanding that of the players themselves, and it's up to them to earn it and to be on point, and when they arrive to be ready to perform, and they just haven't been.
Yeah.
They a lot of times they've kind of a little bit like a recoil effect where they've looked uncomfortable, whether it's on the field with Curtis Mead making errors, whether it's making, some silly mistakes. They just haven't looked the part so far. And so I don't think they're quadruple A players, though. And I don't think it's fair to paint them as that because I think given the opportunity and the time, they would grow into everyday players, in my opinion.
Well, I believe it takes nurturing. I mean, we were even talking earlier about Taj and going from AAA to the Rays level to MLB level. That it is different, and it's how they adapt. But you can't take Chandler Simpson and just take him from where he's at and throw him up into the show, because the level of player from going from single A, double A, triple A, to here, it's massive. And I mean, I think he'll be able to do fine when he gets there. And the tools we have right now, that the players, they still make an exciting game. And and they did well the last couple of times. Papa John's took a hit because the last couple of games they put six on the board. Yeah. Uh, but
You ship some of that up to Nova Scotia, Mark. I don't get any benefit from that whatsoever. Maybe I should open up a franchise up here and connect.
there you go, man. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Who is it? Oh, no. Daggone it. What is the place you guys got up there? The hockey player, Tim Hortons. I'll give you a Papa John's for Tim Hortons.
Sold. You guys look out like bandits down there. Are you kidding me? The snowbirds down there would eat it up.
Oh,
Starbucks would go out of business in Florida.
I when I used to travel and do sales a lot of times up north, I would always find my way to Tim Hortons. But what would drive me crazy was I couldn't find anywhere else. So grins and giggles, I was down here at one time. I said, okay, take me to the closest Tim Hortons. Lo and behold, there's one in Florida. There's one in Tampa. No, what it was, it must have been a sponsorship where the Tampa Bay Lightning are playing hockey. So that made sense. I haven't been there, so I don't know if there's actually any kind of vendor or not. But
No, the funny part with I don't know if it's the same all over, but way back, I think 5 to 8 years ago, Tim Hortons changed their coffee completely, like their source. And the other one went to McDonald's when they were brought up in their carafe and all that kind of stuff. So so it's kind of an odd one because I'll go and get McDonald's coffee and it tastes like what I remember Tim Hortons tasting like. And now, Tim Hortons has a brand new coffee, which the thing that will always strike me, Mark, about Tim Hortons coffee is you can't buy it in grain. You can't buy coffee beans from Tim Hortons. It's always ground. Why?
hmm,
Because the addictive chemicals are mixed in with the grind.
no, really?
You can't buy coffee beans of Tim
Oh.
Hortons at all. You can for McDonald's, but you can't for Tim Hortons.
Oh my
So
gosh, I had no idea. I know, but I loved it there. I ate their snaps twice a day, but it was which probably is why I've got the figure that I do now. But oh, brother. Well, if I can find a way to get you Papa John's up there, I will. Ooh, I'm looking at the screen right now. It looks like a little argument going on between
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. A
well.
few calls. But it's 1-1 in the fifth. Taj is looking good. I've been looking at the pitches, and both him and Ryan are dueling right now. It's almost like anything you can do, I can do better.
Oh, well, I'll let you get back to watching the game, man, and we'll chop it up again next week. But it's always fun chat with you, buddy.
What do we got? 22 days before the vote? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
22 days, Mark. 3 weeks and 1 day. And you might know what's going on with the Rays permanently or semi-permanently.
Well, when they lay the foundation, I'll feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
We'll see, brother. We will
Awesome.
see. All
Well,
righty.
thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. I love it.
I enjoy it too. So you're listening to Matt Germain and Mark Harvett. Matt, you can always find his comments on x.com at Matt underscore Germain underscore. It's at Matt M-A-T underscore Germain Germain underscore. And I'm Mark at the Baseball Biz on Twitter. So check us out. You'll find Matt's musings and scouting tips on there, and always a lot of fun. Once again, Matt, thanks for being on here today, brother.
Not a problem. And I'm looking forward to the next time already.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today here again on BaseballBizOnDeck.com. You can find us there, of course. You can find us Apple Podcasts. You can find us Spotify, iHeartRadio, and everywhere else there's a podcast. So thanks again, everybody, and we look forward to talking to you all again real soon. Special thanks to X-Take RUX for the music rocking forward.